which deals with the muscular system. So there are three types of muscle tissue in the body: skeletal muscle, cardiac muscle, and smooth muscle. Now, I would disagree that these are all part of the muscular system, although I know where your book is coming from. Traditionally, when we talk about the muscular system, we're talking about the skeletal muscle system. And we will talk about cardiac muscle in detail when we talk about the cardiac system, the heart system, and we will touch on smooth muscle when we talk about those organs that contain smooth muscles. But those three types of muscles are skeletal muscle, which is attached to bones of the skeleton. It is voluntary, under conscious control. The second type of muscle is cardiac muscle, which is the wall of the heart. This is an involuntary muscle. It is not consciously controlled. It actually has its own intrinsic nervous system to keep it running, and its job is to pump blood for the heart. And then in many hollow organs we have smooth muscle, the digestive system, for example. It is an involuntary as well, not consciously controlled muscle. If we look closely at the skeletal muscle, we see that it attaches to the bone, and in most cases attaches to two bones. But in some cases it also attaches to the skin in our face that gives us the ability to make facial expressions. It's under our conscious control. It is a voluntary muscular system run by the central nervous system, and the skeletal muscle is the organ of the muscular system. Skeletal muscle itself is composed of skeletal muscle tissue along with nervous tissue, blood, and connective tissues. Those connective tissue coverings are over skeletal muscles include fascia, which directly against the skin. We talked about that a bit when we talked about the hypodermis in the skin. There are also tendons and aponeuroses, which are kind of a flattened like tendon structure. In an individual muscle itself, there are three layers of connective tissue covering. The entire muscle is covered by a layer called the epimysium. That epimysium covers different groups within a muscle. Those groups are called fascicles, and those fascicles are each surrounded by a perimysium. And then each muscle fiber, each cell, is also surrounded by a connective tissue layer called endomysium. And I think it's good for you to remember this epi, peri, and endo, because we're going to see a very similar structure when we talk about nerves in the next chapter. But epimysium, the whole muscle; perimysium, fascicles, groups within the muscle; and endomysium around individual cells. A skeletal muscle cell is also called a skeletal muscle fiber because they are elongated cells. We've said this before, but they are multinucleated. Their plasma membrane is called the sarcolemma, and their cytoplasm is called the sarcoplasm. They have a lot of myofibrils, and those myofibrils include thin actin filaments and thick myosin filaments organized into sarcomeres. There is also sacroplasmic reticulum, a modified type of endoplasmic reticulum used for storing calcium. And there are transverse tubules, also called, more often called T-tubules, and they are organized in a three-partner way to give us what we call a triad. That triad would be one T-tubule and two cisternae of the sarcoplasmic reticulum. Myofibrils are sarcomeres connected end to end. That gives a striated pattern because of the arrangement of the myofilaments in the myofibrils. Sarcomeres contain an I band, which is made up of thin filaments, an A band, which is thick filaments and an overlap with thin filaments. There is an H zone, which is thick filaments only, a Z line or Z disc, which things are going to pull towards, and an M line. That M line we look at the striations, we see two major patterns, an I band and an A band. The I band is a light band composed of thin actin filaments. The A band is a darker band composed of thick myosin filaments with portions of overlapping with the thin actin filaments. That H zone is the center of the A band. It's composed of thick myosin filament. The Z line is an anchor or Z disc that anchors the filaments in place. It's the boundary of a sarcomere. It's the center of the I band. And the M line is going to anchor the thick filaments, and it's the center of the A band. Those thick filaments are myosin proteins, whose heads are going to form the cross bridges we'll get to when we talk about the mechanisms of contraction. And thin filaments are composed of actin proteins along with regulatory proteins, troponin and tropomyosin, which are going to be involved in calcium sensitivity and help prevent cross bridge formation if the muscle is not contracting. Alright, I'm going to stop there. That covers section 1.